Hey everyone. For Division 5, I'm going to be going over Chapter 26, Face Negotiation Theory. It's kind of basically about how people, manage conflict while they're trying to protect their image or, save face. Some people really kind of focus on defending themselves, while I think others are more concerned about protecting relationships or avoiding embarrassment altogether. Something I've done similar. The theory kind of lays out how different ways people, handle conflict, whether it be like avoiding it, giving in, compromising, or maybe even being more kind of direct. I think these choices often depend on cultural background, whether it's their personality, or I think kind of the main one is going to be workplace dynamics. I see this all the time at my current role. One example that comes to mind was when we were meeting with a product manager. I was trying to give him some feedback on how an implementation was going on a bar coding tool that wasn't really working like we hoped. She kind of immediately got defensive. At the time, I just kind of shrugged it off. I didn't think too much of it. But kind of looking back after reading this, I realized that it felt like she was, kind of getting called out. I was, kind of calling her baby ugly, per se, and nobody really likes that. I don't, my coworkers don't, and other people wouldn't as well. It wasn't just kind of criticism of the product itself. It was really personal, to her. She spent a lot of time, developing this, and her and her teams over, the past, 18 to 24 months. That moment kind of helped me realize that saving face isn't just about, how somebody sees themselves, but it's also how they, want others to see their work. Since then, I've tried to be a little bit more mindful on how I bring up issues, especially when someone's name is kind of tied to the outcome, and I hope they would do something similar for myself. Another situation that I've kind of seen recently is with our internal dealer development team. They've been kind of getting defensive because they've been left out of certain pre-implementation conversations about, process adjustments, and what they can do to help dealers for that. Even though they should have, a seat at the table, they should be included in those meetings. Instead of saying it outright, they've been pushing back in small ways or questioning decisions after the fact. And I think that's their kind of way of trying to save face. They feel sidelined, like their input isn't valid. And now they're trying to reassess themselves without looking like they're out of the loop. It's also a good reminder that when you cut someone out of a conversation, even by accident, you kind of risk putting them in a position where they feel like they need to defend their role. My team right now, we're kind of in a similar situation with some product managers. I also believe this theory has really, helped me understand why conversations can feel tense or awkward, even if no one's yelling or being, openly aggressive, or even passive aggressive. It shows how important it is to kind of recognize what matters to people, even their colleagues, my other colleagues, like their image, the role, either or their reputation. How we can, differently approach the conflict in a way that respects that. Whether it's working with dealers, PMs or product managers, or other internal teams, I've seen how managing face makes a real difference, whether people open or shut down.